not constantly assume that it's not possible for Iran, like any country, to change over time. It may not be likely. If you asked me what is the likelihood that we're able to arrive at the end state that I was just describing earlier, I wouldn't say that it's more than 50-50. But we have to try.
President Obama at the Saban Forum here in Washington this weekend, talking about Iran and the possible long-term deal with Iran. Now there's talk on Capitol Hill of a bipartisan plan to move forward with new sanctions, even as the administration is saying that that could potentially kill the interim deal it has with Iran. In fact, Reuters reported this from the foreign minister of Iran, quoting him as saying, quote, or Time magazine rather, said it asked the foreign minister, Zarif, what happens if Congress imposes new sanctions, even if they do not go into effect for 6 months. According to the magazine, he replied, quote, the entire deal is dead. We do not like to negotiate under duress. If Congress adopts sanctions, it shows lack of seriousness and lack of a desire to achieve a resolution on the part of the United States. We're back with the panel. Charles.
Look, that statement shows how fatuous is the president's statement that we just heard, that we mustn't assume that a regime can't change its behavior. All the evidence is that the Iranian regime has not changed its behavior. It's supporting the slaughter of the Assyrian regime in Syria, supporting it actively and in many other ways. It's doubling the number of machines producing enriched uranium. And now the foreign minister, as you quote him, is saying that if the Congress passes a resolution that essentially enforces all of the elements in the interim deal, we're going to walk out. Because what the Congress is thinking of doing, what this resolution would do, is nothing except outline and enforce the provisions. Number one, 6 months. It says, okay, in 6 months, if the negotiations are a failure, we're going to go back and reintroduce sanctions. And it says, what is the end game that we want? Very simple. Dismantle the plutonium facility, number one. Number two, take away the enriched uranium. Under the interim agreement, it simply is changed into a uranium oxide, which can be chemically reversed. And third, it has to dismantle the machines that spin the uranium and enrich them. That's simple. 1, 2, 3 points, and that would end the program and create a new era of peace between the West and Iran. Either it's done or not. That's exactly what we want. And why would the administration reject a resolution which would enforce every element of the plan it says it already has?
Voting here on Bing, should Congress push forward for new Iran sanctions? Yes, 97% of those voting right now. No, 3%. AB, would this be, as a bipartisan push, an embarrassment for this administration?
Yeah, and they've warned him. I mean, he's been well warned that there's bipartisan support for stricter sanctions. I loved that comment that we don't like to negotiate under duress, which means we don't want a tougher deal. The Iranians are on the record saying that as long as they retain enrichment, they got a great deal, and they've pretty much said that. There's forces in both parties, creating, I think, a strong majority. They've warned the White House that they don't think, as Charles Schumer, Senator from New York, says, that this is proportional, meaning we got a bad end of the deal. And I think that there's going to be, in light of the whole relationship right now, even between Democrats, particularly and the president, I think it's going to be very hard for the administration to talk them out of a vote if the numbers are there, and I think they probably will be.
Would the president veto it?
That's a very good question. I think he probably would. I mean, certainly they're going to make very clear their opposition to any kind of a new deal, but I think Charles raises the obvious and I think important question here. It's clear why Iran would oppose enforcing the deal. They didn't think that they were going to have to abide by the deal in the first place. What's far less clear, and I think what will be very difficult for the president to explain, is why he opposes any enforcement mechanism for a deal that he cut and has been out touting for days. One interesting thing to watch, you had polling in the immediate aftermath of the deal that suggested that the public was favorable to the deal. That has turned. There's a new Pew poll out today that finds that 32% only approve of the deal, 43% disapprove of the deal, so it's flipped. You have people who are skeptical that Iran is serious about what it pretends to do.
This is developing, and we'll follow it. This could come as soon as midweek if this bipartisan push happens, and we'll have it all right here.